Islam, Islam, Islam. Everybody, welcome to another episode of Moorish Science Radio. It's your host, Sheikh Way L, a.k.a. Lord Abba. You know, I had to switch it up a little bit, throw the little Steely Dan on, never going to do it without the Fez on. I thought it'd be an appropriate song to open up tonight's show with, being that we're going to be dealing with the Moors and the ethno-history of the Moors and the Berbers and the real or true Arabians in the land that we know today of as Arabia. First, I want to say I rise giving all praise to Allah and the highest of honors to His holy and divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I extend those honors to the harbinger and forerunner, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I extend honors to all true and divine prophets, and I extend honors to you all, for when man honors man, he honors his father God, Allah. Tonight's episode of Moorish Science Radio, I mean, you know, I'm so glad to have our guest on. Doing the research into everything that Noble Drew Ali brought us led me off of, to use this proverbial term, the beaten path. And it just totally led me in another direction other than what other researchers or scholars had tread. And in doing such, it led me to the sister Dana marniche. One of my brothers that I build with, my brother Ali Bey, this is when I'm talking about, this was about 3 years ago. He sent me some information pertaining to Canaanites. I can't remember exactly what he was trying to show me in that piece, but I just read like most of the pages in the particular ebook, and I came across an entry that said it was postulated that maybe the Quraysh tribe was a descendant of ancient Canaan. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, wait, that might be very interesting based on some of the other things Prophet Noble Drew Ali said. And in doing that research, it led me to Sister Dana marniche. I remember reading her first two pieces, Fear of Blackness 1 and Fear of Blackness 2. And all I remember saying was, who is this sister? That's all I said. I said, who is she? I need to find her. I need to talk to her. Her information, the stuff that she is speaking about is like, it lines up with my path first and foremost. And it lines up with some of the information that Prophet Noble Drew Ali relayed to us. So before I bring our guest on, I just want to give those that are listening in, especially anybody that's new in this audience, a glimpse of what Prophet Noble Drew Ali was speaking about in this regard. So I'm going to read the prologue from our Moorish Holy Quran. I'm going to read chapter 45 and chapter 47. Chapter 48. 47. In the prologue, it says, the industrious acts of the Muslims of the Northwest and Southwest Africa. These are the Moabites, Hamathites, Canaanites, who were driven out of the land of Canaan by Joshua and received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle in that portion of Egypt. In later years, they formed themselves kingdoms. These kingdoms are called this day Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. I want to go to chapter 45, rather short chapters. Chapter 45 is called The Divine Origin of the Asiatic Nations. The prophet says, the fallen sons and daughters of the Asiatic nation of North America need to learn to love instead of hate, and to know their higher self and lower self. This is the uniting of the Holy Quran of Mecca for teaching and instructing all Moorish Americans, etc. The key of civilization was and is in the hands of the Asiatic nations. The Moorish, who were ancient Moabites and the founders of the holy city of Mecca. The Egyptians, who were the Hamathites and of a direct descendant of Misraim. The Arabians, the seed of Hagar, Japanese and Chinese, the Hindus of India, the descendants of the ancient Canaanites, Hittites, and Moabites of the land of Canaan, the Asiatic nations of North, South, and Central America, the Moorish Americans and Mexicans of North America, Brazilians, Argentinians, and Chileans in South America, Colombians, Nicaraguans, and the natives of San Salvador and Central America, etc. All of these are Muslims. The Turks are the true descendants of Hagar, who are the chief protectors of the Islamic creed of Mecca, beginning from Muhammad I, the founding of the uniting of Islam by the command of the great universal God Allah. Now I just want to go to chapter 47, which is called Egypt, the capital empire of the dominion of Africa. Excuse me. The prophet says, the inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Amexem, the first true and divine name of Africa, the dividing of the land between the father and the son. The dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. They were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire, with their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes. Their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa across Great Atlantis, even unto the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands before the great earthquake which caused the Great Atlantic Ocean. The river Nile was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdoms. Also, the Niger River was dredged by the great pharaoh of Egypt in those ancient days for trade, and it extends from the river Nile westward across the great Atlantic. It was used for trade and transportation. According to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the Holy Land of Canaan. What your ancient forefathers were, you are today without doubt or contradiction. There is no one who is able to change man from the descendant nature of his forefathers unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator Allah himself. These holy and divine laws are from the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the uniting of the Moorish Science Temple of America. These laws are to be strictly preserved by the members of all temples of the Moorish Science Temple of America, that they will learn to open their meeting and guide it according to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Every subordinate temple of the Grand Major Temple is to form under the covenant of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and to create their own laws and customs in conjunction with the laws of the Holy Prophet and the Grand Temple. I, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, was sent by the great God Allah to warn all Asiatics of America to repent from their sinful ways before the great and awful day that is sure to come. The time has come when every nation must worship under its own vine and fig tree, and every tongue must confess his own. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. That is why the nationality of the Moors were taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black, and colored was given to the Asiatics of America who were of Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father and strayed after the gods of Europe, of whom they knew nothing. On my website, www.moorishsciencetemple.org, I give a detailed explanation, and particularly in regards to that last verse where the prophet speaks about us following the ideals of Europe. of whom we knew nothing. And in our Moorish Quran, we teach that a man's ideals is his God. The things that he does and believes in, his actions and his deeds and his words. And, the prophet prophesied that we would be here in this day and time. And my particular trek on this particular path led me to my guest that I'm about to bring in right now. I'm going to read her credentials off real quick, and then I'm going to open up her line. The sister Dana Marniche is a research specialist with an interest in media and multicultural education. Her academic background is mainly in cultural and physical anthropology, history, and the social sciences. She has taught cultural anthropology, museums, sociology, and world civilization courses as an adjunct faculty member at several colleges. She obtained a master's in education, which included completion of a thesis on the continent analysis of National Geographic's image of sub-Saharan Africa. Her MA in social sciences from the University of Chicago involved a thesis paper summarizing theories concerning human physical types and evolution in prehistoric Holocene, Northern Africa. Her career has taken her into diverse professional experiences, which include work as a research consultant, procurer, and project coordinator for museum exhibitions through the Ralph Applebaum Museum Design Company. Among her museum projects were the African American and Motown Museums in Detroit and the Center for Caribbean Culture Studies and Then Came Columbus exhibit in New York City. She was also researcher for the Pulitzer Prize nominated book on world cultures called Way of the Earth: Encounters with Nature in Ancient and Contemporary Thought. Her publications include The Myth of the Mediterranean Type in Egypt, Child of Africa, The Ethno-History of the Berbers and Arabs in the book The Golden Age of the Moor, and more recently, Fear of Blackness. Another paper on the ethno-history of the Berbers and early Moors slated for publishing within the year by peer-reviewed online West Africa Review. In the 1980s, she spent some months working on translating French text to English for Zahi Hawass, the former director of the Giza Complex and Egyptian Antiquity. She is also a former publicist for the book Black Spark, White Fire, and is currently involved in a journalistic project with its author that redefines the controversy over Martin Bernal's African historical studies and so-called, quote-unquote, Afrocentric writers. And with that, I am going to open up the phone lines and greet our esteemed guest, Islam. Welcome to Moorish Science Radio, sister. You're on the air.
Oh, thank you, Lord Abba. It's very pleasant to be here with you. If there are any questions, it would be better if you asked me them first.
Okay, definitely. My first question that I have is, what was the motivating factor behind your inquiries into Moorish and what I call real Arabian culture? What along your scholastic lines caused you to specifically pinpoint on Moorish and Arabian culture and write in a manner that nobody else has ever written on this subject? I just want to say real quick to the listeners, in reading the book Golden Age of the Moor, when I got to Sister Dana Marniche's part, her name is Dana Reynolds in the book, for anybody who's confused. After I read her book, I closed the book. It was no more for me to read. That was what I was looking for. I knew about our great accomplishments and our great history. Noble Drew Ali touched on some of these things, and it led us to that history. But what she did was crucial. It was so crucial. And, I just want you to give the listening audience, what motivated you to research further into these subjects.
Well, I really think what motivated me was meeting certain Arabic people of the peninsula of Arabia. I was meeting certain people and making silly comments to them about whether they were slaves or not, or descendants of slaves. And this, basically, I was just out of high school and in college and living in New York in the YMCA there, and met a few people that told me that they were from Central Arabia. And, I would make comments asking them if they were, descendants of slaves, and they would just look at me like I was crazy. And they told me, where they were from. And at one point, I think one of them was from Hud in Central Arabia, or Oda. And the thing was, these people looked so different than African Americans in that, they were obviously of African affiliation, but, for example, you would see very gigantic, people of gigantic bone structure that you don't have in America or even Africa. And similarly, you would see very small, almost tiny people, but not so-called pygmy-sized people. And, they would tell me, well, everyone in my town looked just like me. I don't know what you're talking about. And they felt insulted. And then later on, there were certain other occurrences I had in, for example, when I was working with Zahi, actually I was translating Egyptological texts for him from French to English. And there was a guy working there from the Murad tribe, which I had happened to know was an ancient Himyarite tribe. And this guy looked just, basically like a Sudanese. He was little, my color, which is, basically a dark brown with a reddish cast. And, he had a large afro and a mustache, but very dark eyebrows. So he looked a little different from Africans, but, I would talk to him about what Arabians look like and say that the Westerners said that Muhammad was, not looking like you, meaning him. And he, also became kind of irritated by my mentioning that. And he said the people of, that area look like the people of Tehama, which is where, Mecca is located in Hijaz and in that region of Tehama. So I had to find out what the people of Tehama look like, and actually when I was there, he also told me that there was an Arabic person. When I say Arabic, I mean an Arab-speaking person that had written about the peninsula and said that almost everyone in that mentioned in the Bible, for example, was actually Arabian originally. And that, I took as being kind of silly at the time. But as I started researching, on ancient Africans and Ethiopians, and when I say Ethiopians, I mean also Abyssinians, Beja, and other people of that sort, I came across names which were very similar to those I had been reading about in the Arabian Peninsula. So, for example, you find the Afar people are also located in Hajamat and other places over there. Afar is a group of people, pastoral nomads in Ethiopia and Eritrea. And many other groups of people in that area stretching between the Horn of Africa and Nubia. You find those names over in even some of them today in modern Arabia. And then there was a few other things that happened. I started, looking into this guy, Kamal Salibi, who wrote The Bible Came from Arabia. And I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the Genesis part of the Bible, but it does talk about many, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and the so-called Table of Nations. But what I found was that many of these people that were supposed to be, Europeans and Asians and, from all over the world were actually the names were at least similar to the ones that I had been finding in not only in Arabia but in Africa. So then I started looking into, this guy and his work. Well, that was actually only a few years ago, but it seemed to complement what I had been finding, and that actually helped me to discover more of the rest of the people of Genesis.
Yep.
So I just want to let your readers know that I'm not familiar with Noble Drew Ali, and I'm not, so I'm not, his follower or anything.
Yeah, let me just say, I want to put that disclaimer out there because I had mentioned you. I was on a blog talk show, and it was a blog that I had read, and it was dealing with, Canaan and Arabia, and one of the brothers. I got a little fan club of haters. I just have to call it what it is. Took the piece and distorted it and made it seem like it was something more than than what it was, and it wasn't the case. I read your pieces in depth, and I do my own independent research on them. And I just want to let everybody else know that it was because of Noble Drew Ali's teachings that I found this particular sister. She doesn't necessarily support the views of Noble Drew Ali or the Moorish Science Temple of America. She's a professional, and she has, to give her professional opinion and her facts based on her findings as a professional. And I don't want anybody to get it twisted. I got to talk to some of my people like that. I don't want nobody to get it twisted. This is my guest. We have an interest in the same topic. This is somebody's work whom I personally revere. I mention her probably in every last blog that I've done. I think I've mentioned you in every blog I've done, to be honest with you, because your works, your research match up with the things that Prophet Noble Drew Ali said. Even with you mentioning, what was the name of the book? The Bible is in Arabia?
The Bible came from Arabia.
Now, Noble Drew Ali speaks about, the land of Canaan. Noble Drew Ali says the holy city of Mecca was in the land of Canaan. And when you look at, go ahead, sister.
Well, in a sense, he was. Well, I believe he was right in a sense. So there's a people in Israel today, as well as in Arabia, that happen to be black and are called the Kinana. And as you probably know, or may not know, the Quraysh issue, according to all Arabian tradition, from the Kinana. So these Kinana, however, are people that began much further south in the Yemen or southwest Arabia. And there's an area between the Yemen and Mecca that was called Kinana, or even today there's part of it's called the Wadi Kinana, meaning the Valley of the Canaanites, or Valley of the Kinana tribe. So in traditional Arabian genealogy, this is well known. It's also well known that these people traveled north after, a man by the name of Amr Muzakia guided certain people from a dam that had burst in Marib, which is near Sana'a in Yemen. Okay, and so many people, especially, related to Canaanites of different sorts, whether it's Moabites, Girgashites, Amorites, all these people basically have their root in that area, and several of them left to move northward after that point, which was over 3,000 years ago. So that's why you find, all up and down the region of the Arabian Peninsula, people claiming that they come from the south. the Quraysh are very much related to a people called the Hudhail. And the Hudhail are still, they're a black people located to the south of Mecca. The Hudhail was supposed to be the uncle of, I'm not sure if it was Quraysh or Kanana, but in genealogy. But when you're talking about genealogy in Arab tradition, you're really talking not about necessarily literal people, especially when you go further back, just like in the Bible or the Torah, you're talking about, generations of people.
Definitely.
So if you say something about Moab or Jacob, the tribe of Jacob, the tribe of Moab, whatever, you're talking about a whole, a tribe that might have generations of people that extend from somebody named Moab.
Let me say real quick. That's one of the things that I try to tell people. That a lot of the way the Bible is constructed is based on eponymous characters and etiological myths. And one of the things that the Codex writers did was they took these tribes and made them people. And it's crazy because a lot of our leaders that we had that came among us as a people, they literally furthered this particular, I call it psychology, of thinking that an individual man was actually Moab or Canaan, as opposed to this representing a group or a tribe of people. And they believe that all of these names originate with the Bible.
Right.
That's just crazy.
Now, I'm not Now, I'm not saying that all these, people mentioned in Genesis were just tribes. I mean, some of them may have been, like I said, ancient chiefs, and then the tribe was named after them. But, for the most part, things in the Torah or Bible are, for me, in Genesis, are allegorical and based on a lot of, the ancient knowledge that those people had regarding the stars and the consciousness associated with the stars, and their beliefs about, the consciousness associated with the stars. For example, that's why you find when they say that the 360 idols of Allah, they're talking about the 360 degrees, of a circle. They're talking about, for example, in numerology, the word Allah really corresponds to pi, which is a geometric term, but, symbolizing infinity.
Symbolizing what?
Infinity.
Okay.
Infinity, yeah.
I'm taking notes too, y'all. Y'all better be taking notes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I should mention before I continue, though, that some of this interest that I have in the ancient Moors and their interest in astrology and astronomy is due to my background, coming up. I had kind of like a New Age type mother that was interested in, the certain texts that involved, for example, if you know Godfrey Higgins and Gerald Massey and all these early writers, so-called, writers, they were kind of an influence on esoteric belief systems, and, because they, of course, studied ancient Egypt, and they knew that, certain words had to have been derived from them and certain concepts had to have been derived from them. And so, that's where a lot of my kind of, interpretations come from those kinds of writers early on. And then, of course, some of my influences were people like Diop, and then, Dr. Van Sertima. J.A. Rogers, of course, was an influence. Influence. He knew so much about. He documented a lot of this stuff about the Moors too. The Moors coming to Spain, and so that kind of influenced me to get involved, and that also kind of inspired certain dreams and even, waking dreams that I had, in which, when I say that, I'm talking about in a kind of, when I say dreams, I'm talking about in a literal sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I had dreams about certain people that I didn't know why was I seeing these people in my dreams. Mm-hmm. So I had to find out, if there was some truth to what all these people were saying. Were the Egyptians black? Were the Phoenicians black? Were the Sabians black? And basically everything I've learned from those earlier writers almost everything has been proven to be, factual. At least based on archaeology, based on physical anthropology, based on linguistics. When they put them all together, and of course, genetics is finally coming around to confirming a lot of this stuff. So I'm trying to, just expound on all of this for the public, because I think there's something that I don't want to sound too mystical, but I've always felt like I was driven to find this out. I've been woken up in the middle of the night and gone to books and put my finger on a passage, that would tell me the answers to certain things. So I don't know if it's my ancestors or the ancestors.
Yeah, sister, look, I go through the same thing. I have nights where I'll just simply be laying in the bed. I'll be thinking about all of my studies and research, and something will just wake me up. Like, well, not I'm already woke, but something will just get me up, and I'll get up, and I'll see a book, for instance. Like I have Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages, and I don't know, something to just tell me to flip through the book, and I'll start flipping through the pages, and I'll land right on something that I was pondering on, or I know what you mean, sister. I know what you mean.
Well, is there anything you'd like to discuss?
Definitely. Oh, definitely. How did you link up with Ivan Van Sertima to contribute your portion of the ethno-history of the Moors in the book, The Golden Age of the Moor?
Well, I had been in his class where he had been teaching about the Moors at Rutgers. So once I had, that was, after, that was my early 20s. And when, I had taken that class because I know he had had interest in, ancient African cultures and that kind of thing. But so after I think he had been working on the Journal of Asian, I think it was the Journal of Asian Studies, or not the Journal of Asian Studies, the Journal of African Studies, but an Asian volume, and then I had actually shown him some of what I was, researching and writing about, and was trying to, actually told him that we should work on something regarding the Moors, regarding the Berbers, and that's basically how it started.
Okay. Go ahead, sister.
No, I was just saying he was a very moving person. I mean, when you went to his lectures, you could just feel something, It was like he definitely brought your ancestors out of somewhere. And, you just learned so much from him. And he was, I know he was half Native American, I think. But he wanted to, bring that knowledge of what Africans, or I guess you call them Moors, but I call them Africans, to the Americas. That people were criticizing him, and even though he had a lot of the, necessary archaeological testimony about it and physical.
I've actually read, sister, excuse me, I actually read some of those critiques some years ago, and they were crazy. I was reading them, and I don't even know how I came across that information, to be honest with you, but I was reading some of the critiques about Van Sertima's works, particularly when they came before Columbus. And one of the lectures, he said, that the history of the Moors was like a complex subject. I'm paraphrasing. And he said it's one of the most neglected chapters in quote unquote Black history. And when everything, when I'm dealing with this subject, I always revert back to Noble Drew Ali, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be having this conversation in the manner that we're having it now, because I wouldn't be on this particular path. And Noble Drew Ali stressed the fact that that we were Moors, and he urged us to take our place in the affairs of men, and that that names like Negro, Black, and Color, that these names were given to us as slave labels. He said that we were not descendants of slaves, or that we were never slaves, that we were bound free men. So
well, he's talking about, I think, a certain group of Africans that came over here. There were, a certain group that were never slaves, but there definitely were and are slaves in Africa, because that's where it started. I mean, Africans were the greatest bringers of slaves from Europe into Africa. So that's always been a part of our heritage, unfortunately.
Definitely.
But so there were also people that came over after they were prisoners of war. Obviously from especially from the Sahel area and the Senegambia region even, because you had the Fulani, who were very, at that time, warlike, and other people. Tuareg were there too. The Tuareg are the people that wear the veil. And they're also located in Burkina Faso, and other places in south of the Sahel, or the Sahel, which is Mali, Niger, and those types of countries, Senegal. So you have basically people that were Muslim living in different parts of the entirety of Sudan, even southern Sudan, and that's where you get even people like the Yoruba and other groups saying that many of those Ghana too claim that they came from Canaan. A lot of the people in Africa themselves still claim that they came from Canaan. So it's not something that. But I'm also again not saying that the entirety of Africa came from Canaan, from that small area. What I'm saying is a lot of people. There were groups that came over from Arabia, and some by way of Syria, others by way of the Yemen. And they came across Africa over centuries, over many centuries, and this is dating back to the time of starting before Moses. They've been coming over here. So a predominant group of people in North Africa, that once existed in North Africa, were called the Zagawa or Zawaga, or in Portuguese, Azuagos. And if even as late as the 16th century, you find texts that talk about the Azuagos being anciently called the Moors. Portuguese texts. And the Zawaga were probably related to most likely related to the Gala, so-called Gala, and Zagwe Ethiopians. And these people are also the same people that came to be called the Songhai.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so these Songhai mixed with, other groups of Africans, for example, the Mand, and they moved southward. And you find a lot of them still in the area of the southern parts of the North African countries, in the desert regions there, and in the Adrar oases, and living, the regular sub-Saharan-looking people that are Muslim have some background from those people. Okay, and then they were also not necessarily Muslim at the time. They were, mainly Jews and other pagan type of Arabians. This is long before. I'm talking about long before the Islamic period. That they came into Africa, and that's why you find in Ethiopia that many of the scholars say that a lot of Ethiopia used to be Jewish, not just the so-called Falasha, but the Zagwe or Agao people who had the Zagwe dynasty over there, and several other people.
Yeah.
So Judaism is another interesting aspect to this whole thing, because many of the Moors, or in many of the, I should say, the black colored people in Spain and Portugal were originally Jewish and went up there as Jews.
That's right.
And not Muslim. But and then other waves of people also came and shared with those people in Spain and Portugal. I mean, there were people of Syrian origin, meaning white Syrian origin. There were people of the Goths had had been brought in as slaves and were converted to Islam. The Slavs, they had dynasties in Spain. Many the Persians and the Turks and many people had dynasties in Spain, especially after a certain period, in the latter parts of Muslim rule. But there's no question that the predominant strain in Muslim Spain at the beginning, especially the first several centuries, was the Berber one, which was completely black. And
let me ask, sister, about the Berbers, right? I have the histories of Herodotus. I actually have it in my hand. I have all 9 books, and I've been getting deep into it. And he's clear on his descriptions of the Egyptians and Ethiopians or Libyans. There was a passage that struck me in book 2. I guess we can call it chapter 56, where he's speaking about a barbarian, and I for whatever reason that's the way I choose to pronounce the word, as opposed to barbarian, because I believe, and this is my theory, that when he's saying barbar or barbarian or barbarian, he's actually saying Berber. But again, that's my theory. But in this particular it's book 2, chapter 57, and he's speaking about this woman and her voice, and she sang like a bird, and they were saying that the dove was black, and so it indicated that the woman was an Egyptian. So I wanted to know your take on Herodotus, for instance, if you did any in-depth research in that regard, on his usage of these people called barbarians, because his history is filled with these particular people, all throughout.
In the Greek world, barbarian just meant anyone that spoke, usually meant someone that spoke a different language. Barbar meant to speak of Babel. But when you talk about Berbers being barbarian, those are actually 2 different words, because even as late as, I think it was the 11th or 12th century, Ibn Atir, who was a Kurd, meaning someone close to Turkey, stated that there are, among the very black peoples, there are the Ethiopians, the Berbers, and some barbarians. Meaning, the barbarian is not the same thing as the Berber. Berber means it has to do with wells and water, and you find towns named Berber in Somalia and other places in the Horn. So those are two different words, and Herodotus is talking about Egyptians, who weren't the Berbers exactly in that time. Even though there's an overlap of peoples in various periods. But Berber is not the same word as barbarian. That's something that certain people, I think in Golden Age of the Moor, had kind of promoted that view, but that's, to my knowledge, incorrect. And the Berbers, the original Berbers were probably both, African and Arabian, or people that lived in both Africa on both sides, the Eritrean or Sea of Harith, which has been now called the Red Sea. And the use of the word Berber by the Romans has nothing to do with, that which the way we use it today. I mean, Berber today just means somebody who speaks the Berber dialect. And it can be, and you can look any way and speak Berber, and also you can have the culture can be different, So the same thing with Arab. The word Arab just refers to someone who speaks Arabic, and even though the original Arabs, just like the original Berbers, were apparently, mainly black peoples or populations, before, other peoples came down into their regions. I'm almost forgetting what I'm saying. The word Berber, for example, up until the 16th century, there was only descriptions of Berbers, indicating black people. For example, there was 5 major tribes of Berbers. I think it was Masmuda, Sanhaja, Kitama, Gadala, and Hawara, or I'm not sure what the other one was, but all of those tribes, and I wrote, something about it online too.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at that quote right now.
Right. All those people were, up until the 15th and 16th century, described as blacks. So those are Berbers. If other people, there are peoples that, like I said, came to call themselves Berbers that are not necessarily as much affiliated with the African Berbers as they were with Romans and Vandals, and Andalusians came by the hundreds of thousands into the Rif area, where Berbers were described as so black that they scared the horses of the Syrians in the 7th century. They were black because they let me see if I can find a quote here, but it talks about how they were occupying the mountains of Tangier across from the Iberian Peninsula, and that's the Rif region, and it talks about how they were invaded by the Spaniards. I mean, these are Andalusian texts that talk about them being invaded by the Syrians, and the Syrian horses, because they started gnashing their teeth, and their teeth were white and they were gnashing their teeth, and because the people were of such a, it was horrifying to the horses, and the horses wouldn't attack them or whatever. So I have that quote online in various places.
I think I read that in your sphere.
But there are literally dozens of quotes about the Berbers, and not a single one that I've been able to find describe Berbers as other than really black or near black people. And the reason is because at that time, not everybody that lived in North Africa that was considered a Berber. For example, in Kabalia, you have people that are descended from a number of different groups. Even, I think it was Procopius had said that 80,000 Vandals had settled that region. So, let me see. I'm just on my computer trying to put words in. My computer's so slow. I was just trying to find some of the text for you. But if you look at Procopius' text, definitely you'll find where it's De Bello Vandalico, where you find the Moor is described as black. You'll find the same from Diodorus Siculus. You'll find it in Lucan describes the Garamantes as black. You'll find the Garamantes were actually pre-Moorish indigenous people of Libya, probably originally related to the Harritan, the so-called Harritan people. And then they were invaded by the Zagawa, so they became more warlike. But they were, and those were the people, the Harritan are really the people that were probably most affiliated originally with the ancient Egyptians. I mean,
the Harritan, that's interesting, because they make the claim that they are the true, rulers of Morocco, the Harritan and the Nawa. I don't know if they use the term rulers, but are the true possessors of that land, and they speak of the quote-unquote white Moors as invaders, that just took over their land. So, that's interesting.
Well, they use the word white Moors sometimes for the Moors, meaning the Hassaniya and Charza, who are the people that are often still called Moors in the Mauritania and that sort of thing. But because the word white, as we remembered in African dialects, was not necessarily the same as it is in and even in Arab, especially in Arab dialects, the word white did not mean white as we know it, as in European. Now, Elliot Smith also talked about how in Morocco the word Moor. Elliot Smith was an anatomist who studied ancient Egyptians, and he was, I think, from Australia, but he traveled, certain parts of North Africa and discovered that the word Moor in Morocco really was usually used for people that showed some Negro, so-called Negroid or Negro appearance. So that I found very interesting because, you have people online today trying to say that, Moors were just white, regular white, or whitish, I should say.
Wikipedia, man. Oh, my goodness. The Wikipedia article is just blatantly, and I believe... I believe
they're
that's
not
what
even...
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I was saying I believe that's what Van Sertima meant, when he was, speaking about the complexity of the topic and, its neglect. Why did they go to such painstaking, academic sleight of hand, so to speak, to just discolor the Moors in their paintings and things of that nature. And then when you go to a website like Wikipedia, almost every picture, and I just went on there a few weeks back, I think they added 2 actual Moorish pictures to the site, but all of the main images are of what I would call a Hagarine or the Syrian type. And it's just
well,
crazy.
mainly what you're seeing is probably seeing something from the Primera Chronica, which was done by a single man. He was representing Muslims from different regions, not necessarily of Spain, but so they like to put, and he did consider that, more just meant somebody who was a Muslim or pagan.
Definitely.
So,
definitely.
yeah. So,
but they do us such a disservice because it's like they don't put none of, I have so many images and paintings of the Moors that, you know, we found online over about probably the past 2 to 3 years. And it makes, you know, it begs the question, like, and where are these images in academia? You know, I'm actually writing a movie script, right? I just want to get a little shameless plug in real quick. I'm actually writing a movie script called Al-Andalus, when the Moors ruled Spain. And in the script, the young man, you know, he gets his homework assignment. The teacher, Miss Goldstein, is talking about the Moors and how they were barbaric, and that's their report. So he so happens to sit on a train next to an elder, and, you know, he decides to take out his textbook, and the elder says, so that's who they're teaching you how the Moors look now, huh? And, the young high school student, he's like, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And the elder pulls out a book and says, these are the images of the original Moors. And, the story, it takes hold and takes place. I actually can't wait to finish that piece. I'm very excited to see where that one goes. The way I'm drawing it up is, it's outside of my range of what I do, but what can't we do? We're Moors. I'm coming up on the 10 o'clock hour. This is when I, take my little break, sip a big gulp of my tea. If I have a guest, I let them get their, little break, water break. But I just want to ask you a question real quick, because there's some misconceptions in certain Moorish groups about the troglodytes. You have certain brothers that teach that the troglodytes are this distorted European beast that was created. I can't really recall their whole mythos in that regard. And I just wanted you to give a brief breakdown on the troglodytes based on your research.
Well, I mean, the only time I see the word troglodyte used is usually with the term Ethiopian. Mm-hmm. So, the ancient classical Greek, at least, writers talked about the Ethiopian troglodytes. Well, they did also talk about the Arabian troglodytes or troglodytes, and they were the same people. They occupied both sides of the Red Sea. Mm-hmm. There was also the Libyan or Pharisee troglodytes, who were basically an early kind of, I wouldn't say Berber, but mainly related to the Afar. And there's people that still occupy, ravines in Eritrea and across the sea. So, I don't like to respond to this kind of, nonsense. I'm not talking about you, but kind of nonsensical suggestions. The interest in making white people into animals is just, it's just silly.
Yeah, I mean, so nothing, that you've seen showed that they were actually what we call them Europeans or the pale skinned nations of Europe.
Well, yeah, they might be getting this from some of the, Western or, European non-scholarly blog sites that try to make the troglodytes into the Horites into the Hurrians of like the area extending from Turkey to Mesopotamia, and the Horites of the Old Testament and the Hurrians were actually two different people, even though there's some actually probable connection between the Keftiu. I don't know if you're familiar with the Keftiu, but the Keftiu were people that were represented in ancient Egyptian paintings almost, the same color as them or even darker than them, and usually with longer hair, but some people think that the Keftiu were the Hurrians, actually, or the Sumerians of Mesopotamia, which would make sense. But the Horites of the Bible, who were supposed to be, cave dwelling, they were probably the same people that are, in Seir today, or Seir. In the Genesis, you'll see that the Horites and the Canaanites and the Hittites and all those people were, peoples of, the Hori were Canaanites, but the Hittites were Edomites or something. It's some mix-up, but all those people were just, groups or small clans of Canaanites who were still there. One of them is called the Beni Hur, or Ben Hur, or the Ben Huri. Okay. And that's where the word Horite actually comes from. And you'll also have the name of, they were children of Seir or Sayer, and you have the tribe of Seir still in the Yemen that are called Edomites, And I see also on blogs these kind of crazy blogs about Edomites being, so-called white people.
Yeah, I've seen that as well.
Yeah, so it's just really nonsensical stuff that people are in order to make, certain, Europeans or white people look bad. But in reality, people mentioned in Genesis are only mentioned, because they're related to these early Afro-Arabian people. And when you talked about Noble Drew Ali stating that they came to America and China, all that stuff, but I look at it as, these people were early merchants and seamen, a lot of them. Okay, and still are, they're pirates and that kind of thing. If you go to the Eritrean area where the Phoenicians were said to have come from by Herodotus, you'll still see people, that look like some of the Phoenicians that are represented in ancient Egyptian paintings, But those people traveled probably to different continents, and that's why you find Yemenite inscriptions over here in America. And you might be calling them something else, but and then there's people that say it's Phoenician, and it probably is. It's all the same. And then you have the people that say that they're. Yeah.
Are you speaking about the inscriptions that were found in Colorado?
I'm not
the Yemenite?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're at least in Colorado, and it might have been a few other places. But, all those people, the people in Ethiopia, if you look at them and you look at, what the people look like across the sea in Hadramaut and Yemen, the southernmost parts of Yemen, they're still, as they were described in ancient times, as basically black people. Now, I just want to say something about the so-called Berbers. There is also this man has been called a Moor, Ibn Khaldun, who's actually, from Andalusia and wasn't necessarily so much related to Berbers, but had possibly one Arab ancestor, and so they're calling him a Moor or whatever. But he said that in his book, he talks about Sudan being Central Arabia. Central Arabia. Central Arabia and Yemen were the first. I think Yemen was the first known as Sudan, meaning they were like the blacker of the black peoples, and then there were in the Jed and in Ghana, I think there was the less blacker, or it's something. There's some zones in there that I just find interesting because it connects, black people to Arabia like in a way that's different than other people have connected them. So, Wesley Muhammad or Wesley Williams is, where I first, I think, saw that connection. Wesley,
definitely. The brother Wesley Muhammad. He pre, I'll use the term pre-Muhammadan Arabia, but he has put out a lot of works that I've learned so much from. Actually, I call y'all two my favorite scholars because y'all's particular information touches right on my line of research, so I just want to take a break, sister, and, before I take the break, I want to tell everybody nationality is the order of the day. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, if you do nothing else, proclaim your nationality. Please find the nearest Moorish Science Temple of America in your state, city, or town and go proclaim. If not, we have a online platform set up to whereas you can print out an application and mail it in. We're doing our best in this regard. Because we have to bring nationality to the people. For those of you that listened to my good brother Sharif Anil Bey last night on Know the Ledge Radio, my brother went in on the importance of what Noble Drew Ali did without having to invoke Noble Drew Ali's names 1,000 times. He just broke the program down and how it was applicable to today. Just so people may know that we are not into personality worship or man worship. Our Moorish Quran teaches us that man shall not worship man, he shall worship Allah, the Holy One. So please go to the site, www.moorishsciencetemple.org. Find the link that says proclaim. We are doing our part in the uplifting of fallen humanity and teaching our people those things that would make them better citizens. Please check out our other broadcasts. On Mondays, we have Sister Kenyatta Orset Bey and Brother Tarain L, who does astronomy, numerology, and astrology readings. I got mine done a few weeks back. I was very impressed, and I don't know, I think it gave me good luck. I don't really believe in luck. I don't want to sound contradictory, but after the reading, I just kind of felt empowered, and everything that they laid out, it came to fruition. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll give this thing a second look. On Wednesdays, you're listening to Moorish Science Radio with your host, Sheikh L, a.k.a. Lord Abba, the battler, as they call me, the debater. Yes, I am. And Thursday nights, we have Sister Kenyatta Orset Bey again, Brother Shante Finley L, and Brother Tarain L again on the shows on the Power Hour. And they deal with economics and finance. You're dealing with loan specialists, mortgage specialists, one who has a degree in economics, one who's a master in investment, and dealing with different types of currencies. That show is very, very important and very vital. Money management, budgeting, et cetera, things that I have a serious problem with. And their show has been helping me out immensely. Friday nights, we come back, we read, out of our Moorish Quran. We go into the esoteric teachings of Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought to us. And, I don't really want to use the term esoteric because they actually explain all of the esoteric teachings. And, he compiled these sources from different information, as I guess to say there's nothing new under the sun. They just hid this stuff from you. There you go. Take it and save yourself. And the last Friday show we did, my brother Ngozi was on. The brother came on, and, he shut it down. He shocked me. So I want to give a shout out to the Moor. I see you on the line, beloved, with your hand up. I'm going to get to you. Sundays, we have Brother Gabriel Hernandez L, who serves as the chairman of our particular temple group. And he does holistic radio. And, he goes in on holistic medicines and healings. And the brother is certified in herbology and iridology and acupuncture, and the things. This is Noble Drew Ali brought herbal remedies to our people and said, my remedies will cure you of anything that you were not born with. And so we're trying to invoke these things as we push for a Moorish America. I just want to take a quick break and play one of our favorite songs on the show. We're going to come back, open up the phone lines for our esteemed guests, and go in from there. Islam. Welcome back to Morris Science Radio. We have our esteemed guest, the sister Dana Marniche. I just want to let everybody know that, I spoke to the sister yesterday. I didn't want to sound starstruck, so I had to, calm myself down. Some people get excited, when they meet a famous rapper my intellect leads me in the opposite direction. I would rather meet, some of my favorite scholars. I had the pleasure of meeting Wesley Muhammad last year, face to face actually. And, so I got the sister on the show. We know that there are no strange happenings. There are no coincidences, and that law governs all events. And so, now we're going to go to our call line. And I'm going to open up my first caller, area code 315, ending in 3814. Islam, welcome to Morris Science Radio. You're on the air.
Islam, Brother Wade. This is Brother Sharif and Ayo Bay, Syracuse, New York.
Islam, brother, man. How you doing, beloved?
All is well, all is well. I want to give the greetings to your guest and incredible scholar, Sister Dana Marniche. Greetings, sister. Good evening. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm very good being on here.
Very good, very good. Well, first, I want to rise and give praise to the great God, Allah, Father of the universe. Honors to His Prophet, Noble Dwali. Honors to the Moore Science of America. Honors to Moore Science Radio. Honors to all the listeners. Honors to the guests on your show. And honors to our hosts, specifically for elevating the standard of Moorish American scholarship by having our guest Dana Reynolds on the show. Honors to you, brother.
Honors.
So I have a question. I guess the question may be somewhat multifaceted. One of the last points that the sister made, which is very powerful and very interesting about some of the ancient people like the Eritreans being the seafaring people, even in ancient times. What I'd like to ask her is about her own research and how it relates, these people in particular, how any or if any of her research on these people have touched or in any way connected to the battle or the conflict between the two ideologies of isolationism versus diffusionism.
Okay, when you're talking about, when I think of the ancient Eritrean area, I'm thinking of when Herodotus talks about the Phoenicians having come from the Eritrean Sea.
Yes, ma'am.
And one of the things that this scholar Kamal Salibi brings up is that, and I was talking about it in the beginning, is that the Canaan actually and the original, basically the people that are described in, the Quran and Torah as being Moabites and all those people, later called, the Canaanites are later called Phoenicians. But this man had discovered that there is, in fact, all the names of the villages mentioned in the Bible or Genesis, including the Phoenician cities and the Philistine cities or towns, are located in that area. And what I had discovered is also that those people across from them in Somalia, the Dana afar, and all those, nomadic people are the same people that were in this area that Salibi is talking about. And that's why I mentioned that, the pirates and all that thing, because in reality, the Phoenicians and these people were the same people. That's my point. Okay, so these people in ancient times, bringing their dialect, which was the ancient, a pre-Arabic Sabian type of dialect, related to Phoenician, because a lot of people don't understand that the Phoenician or Canaanite dialect and in Hebrew were basically the same. It's like connecting Haitian with French or something. They were, very highly related languages.
Like
so
Spanish and Italian.
Yes, Spanish, Latin dialects, right.
Mm-hmm.
So these people brought their dialects to various places, such as the Americas, such as Java and the area that was originally called Sin, which people are now trying to translate as China, meaning the north, northern China, when it really meant Java and Indonesia. That's called an Indochina. That was the original Sin of the Arabs. When they talked about the land of Sin, when Jahiz talked about the land of Sin and Masin, they're talking about the land of the blacks that were living in that area. Okay, so there were Kunlun, indigenous blacks. There were Arabian blacks. There were mainly Arabian blacks and indigenous blacks that were there already. So the Arabs, meaning the ancient original Arabs, came to these places, and they probably kept their records of where they went, including Central and South America. And came back to their homeland. That's the only way I can figure that they, that at least Noble Drew Ali had gotten this information. Unless he was just doing it telepathically. It seems as if he knew. He must have known Arabic, because even apparently where Timbuktu, which is being ravaged unfortunately today by Farag and other people, Al Qaeda also, mainly. Supposedly, a lot of those texts have the knowledge of not only the Phoenicians but the entire world, in there. The Tuareg today consider themselves descendants of the Phoenicians as well as the Yemen. That's all that you might see online people saying, well, the Tuareg don't relate to the Berbers, because the people that are called Berbers further north, they don't really have as much of a connection with Canaan, because they're not so much Berbers. There's a mixture of different people, Romans, and other people, much further north. And all the further south you go, you'll still see in southern Morocco, southern Algeria, southern, just when you get away from the coast, you'll see people that are much darker than people along the coast that Western scholars like to focus on as the Berbers, saying there's some kind of Indo-European Berber race that came down. And, so that's why you have, even in, you'll see on the Native American sites some people claiming that they're the Jews.
Yes.
You have all this stuff, and then rather than go to the facts, they would rather believe, some of these Western people would rather believe that UFOs created all these similarities,
Well, sis, again, praise Allah for your research. This is incredible because, this being your field of expertise, I'm sure you're aware of the bloody wars between, isolationists versus diffusionists on the matter, and how even in 2013, the idea that there's cross-cultural pollination between, across the Atlantic in ancient times is considered fantastic, when there's mountains of evidence, to the contrary. And what is amazing to us is that a little man in Newark, New Jersey in 1913 could be talking about things that would put people directly on the cutting edge of these discussions and dialogues. And you know what I mean? That's what's incredible to us. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, that's why I think it's important that we, come from at least a anthropological and archaeological framework to kind of support, if that's what you're interested in, to support his ideas, because so they won't be misinterpreted, and so that you won't have people out there saying that it's crazy. Yes. What he's saying, I think, when it came to the so-called people from China and people from Colombia being Moors, I think what really he must have been talking about is the fact that some of these people, the early Ethiopic peoples called Canaanites or Phoenicians, and those merchant people who are still causing problem in the Red Sea, as they did in ancient times, you know, visited these places and settled there and probably mixed with those people. Just as Joseph has said that the people of Noah actually went to, you know, settle in various places, and they were the first to be named. I mean, they brought their names there, you know, and settled among later people. Joseph is the Roman Jewish, you know, historian who was explaining, you know, the Bible and stuff. So I just wanted to quote something, though. For example, I had up here. Let's see if it's still here. A lot of people don't understand that in Arabic text, for example, Sudan is often said to be son of Canaan rather than, you know, son of, and Cush, too, is sometimes said to be son of Canaan. And that's because the Canaanites and the Cushites were basically the same people, the same Semitic or Afro-Asiatic-speaking people. Some of them went, you know, settling in the area of Nubia and Egypt and Arabia during the Neolithic time, you know, and that's why they shared similar you know, I would say early religious practices. For example, there's the Ark of Nu in ancient Egypt, which is, you know, probably the same root as the story of or allegory of Noah. The Ark of Noah, yeah, and you find in Arab tradition, Noah is called Al-Jarhumi, meaning the man of the tribe of Hadoram.
Tribe of Hadoram, yes.
Hadoram or Haderab, which is basically a tribe that is located in both Africa and Hadramaut, which was you know, related. The name Hadramaut is also related. Hadramaut and Hadoram and Haderab, the Haderab Beja, are related to these people. And those are some of the people that went also to Java. And that's where you find, if you look even in the Arabian Nights story, they link up ancient black tribes of Arabia with, you know, that area. So it's a fascinating subject. You know, if you know all the, you know, linking them up through archaeology and linguistics and the tradition, the genealogical tradition of the Arabian people, it all really comes to make a lot of sense. You know, it explains a lot of where these theories are coming from about, you know, like I said, Jews, Native Americans being Jews and or claiming to be Israelites, even the Mormons talking about the, you know, Israelites coming over here. Because, yeah, they were all one and the same people originally. But, see, it started off in southwest Arabia and then moved north. Now, there's a whole controversy over that, you know, that theory that the original Canaan and Israel were in Arabia, but there are certain scholars that are coming to, you know, that the conclusion that there's not enough evidence of, you know, archaeological evidence of an Israel in Syria, and biblical evidence. In other words, it's not panning out the way it looked, you know, maybe a century ago to be doing. So now there are certain scholars that are looking into this. I'm in touch with them. I'm in touch with some of them, but I don't want to mention their names because I don't want to get them in trouble. They're very
much.
Scholars. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer. That was powerful.
Well, thank you for that wonderful question. Okay.
Honest, brother, man.
Yes, sir. Real quick before you put me back on pause, her answer was like a short exegesis on chapter 47, verses 6 and 7 of the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science of America. It was incredible.
Definitely. I'm gonna
incredible.
I'm gonna go back and you already know more and go in. Like I told the people in the introduction, and I'll said it again through our discourse that you know, my research, you know, it led me to her work. And that answer that she just gave you is the reason why. You know, I was looking for more than the accomplishment of what we did in Spain and, you know, North Africa and things of that, and other parts of Europe as well. I was looking for something a little more concrete to match up what, you know, Prophet Noble Drew Ali said to us, you know.
Right.
Did he just make up a bunch of stuff for talking about Canaanites and, you know, or it
brother, what's so powerful about what he said and then what the sister's saying now, which backs what Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, is that when you follow the money, you know, in other words, when you ask who benefits between the two arguments of isolationism versus diffusionism, when you follow the money and ask who benefits, it becomes obvious. The isolationist ideal benefits European manifest destiny or so-called white supremacy.
Oh, that's right.
That's what it benefits. And you're talking in the, you know, from 1913, which was when European colonialism was like a big thing. That's how the European world powers were getting their money. This is how they were getting big and getting powerful. You had a man. So you know, during this time period, you know, this was the time period. I mean, even before 1913, but and after the era of the Smithsonian Institution, basically, you know, as an example, you know, taking any artifact that they found in the Americas that went against isolationism or manifest destiny and dumping them in the Atlantic River. I mean the Atlantic Ocean.
Now, look, let me say real quick, I came across a source, right? I can't call it right now. It's in one of my videos. One of the ways that they determined people was through, and excuse me if I butcher this word, dolicephalai, which I believe is the study of skulls. And the source stated that the skulls that they examined over here related to the skulls that were found among the Egyptians, the Tuaregs, the Copts, and the Moors. And he gave it a classification, and his classification was Egypto-Atlantidae. You know, so yeah, excuse me, y'all know I like to present my sources. I just don't have it in front of me. It came up in the conversation, but I thought that was very interesting. But it's in my video, I think, are all so-called black people Moors. If I'm not mistaken, it's in that video.
Yes, sir. Praise Allah, brother. Again, thank you for allowing me to ask the question. Keep up the good work. This show is definitely a step in the right direction in representing the Prophet's movement intelligently, brother.
Honors, brother. You know, it's time to step up the scholarship, man. You know, it's time to build with actual scholars. We've been fed so much, you know, fantasy island information over the past couple of years.
That's right.
Definitely. Praise Allah. I'm glad you came over.
Sister Marniche, God bless you, and keep up the good work. And you know, this is very useful for all of us. Thank you very much, sister.
God bless you too. Thank you.
Yes.
Peace, brother, man. Okay, I want to go to the next caller. Area code 773, ending in 9184. Islam. Welcome to Morris Science Radio. You're on the air.
Islam to you, Brother Lord Albert. Islam. Hey, this is Brother Amir Kieta Kamara, better known as Yassi Ngozi. Peace to you, Sister Dana Manichi. Your work, the things that you've been dropping today, it kind of covered everything that I, been trying to figure out. I have a bachelor's in biology. And what's interesting is that I want to go back to school to become a geneticist. And, we take a course in genes, understand, the 4 layers within the nucleotide of genes, guanine, adenine, cytosine, and thymine to understand the haplogroups or haplotypes. And we understand that that's only, 1% of your DNA sequence, but it goes unchanged, regardless of, who you mix with, you get your mitochondria from the mother and you get your paternal lineage from the father, and it can go unchanged regardless of the RMI or the remaining match index at the autosomal level. But what was interesting when you was breaking down, now I noticed in Arabia and in East Africa, you can find people with orthonetism features, and you can also find them with pronetism features. I don't want to use the word Negroid or Caucasian because they kind of threw that out, because you find people with thin, narrow features in East Africa, but they have tropical limb proportions, and you can find the same thing in the Arabian Peninsula. But what's interesting is, with this haplogroup E marker, which is it has a YAP marker, which is a yes associate protein. And what's interesting about that haplogroup E, I know most of us, like I'm a descendant, my maternal lineage is L3F1B1, which comes from Fulani women. My Y goes back to a Bantu, or what we call, the Bantu people of West Africa, E1B1A78. But what's interesting about the E3B haplogroup that was in Arabia, you were absolutely on point, because the Phoenicians did have an E3B. They had E1B1B1A, also a few of them who was, from Central Asia towards not the Captain Sea, but towards the Georgia region, because you had nomadic Euro-Asians coming towards that way, intermingling with the indigenous black population, because we know the Natufians were black from East Africa, and they had haplogroup as E as well. But what's interesting is, what I want to know is, were the original Arabians, because I know the Elamites were Dravidians. Now, people already left out of Africa 60,000 years ago with haplogroup CT. And from CT, which is what they call Euro-Asian Atom, it gave rise to CF, and from CF it gave rise to the single C and a single F, and the single G, H, and IJK, and then IJ, and then I, and then a single J that you see today in Arabia, and you see it in Oman, the country Oman, and then across from that you find it in Iran and Pakistan. And my question to you is were the original Arabians, because I know the E marker comes out of Africa, because you got 32 subclass branches to E3B, and as a whole you have over 50 subclass branches to haplogroup E, because E3B and E3A split around 20,000 years ago from EP and 2, and they were related. But my question to you is that were the original Arabians, I know some were East African from Yemen, but were a lot of them immigrants from the Dravidian population that came out of India, those blacks that came out of India with those orthonetism features, certain narrow features, rectangular orbit, triangular, square angle, with that the races Europeans like to say Caucasian, but I don't want to say that because you can find those same, you can see them in Africa, and it starts with us first. So my question to you is, were they predominantly a Dravidian stock who already lived in those regions from the first or from the second migration out of Africa from haplogroup CT, or were they those populations who came in through the E marker, who was going in through the last glacier period, before the Holocene glacier period, when North Africa became desert and from vegetation before it became fertile again 10,000 years ago? Were those these people? Were they the people from the second migration through haplogroup CT, the Dravidian stock that lived in India and in the Elamites who were Dravidian?
We have to define who we're talking about in terms of Dravidian, because now, as with Arabian, or not even Arabian, but Arab or Berber, you have Dravidians that look, all kinds of ways. I mean, from North Indian to almost purely African. So, and my belief is that the Dravidian dialect and their culture, ancient culture that dialect is associated with, were actually more related to people that came in after the Mesolithic period, because I don't necessarily think that they were related to. They were the same people as the Austric people, because there's other black types in India. There's people that were related to the original very small types that were in much further north. Sergi used to call them the Pygmoid type of the Mediterranean type, and that was his word. And then there are people that are related to the Australian Aborigines, and then there's people related to the Andaman Islanders, and then there's the Dravidians. Now the Dravidian culture, I mean, they have much too many cultural, I'll just say, features to have not been, connected to the Neolithic ways out of Africa. I mean, and they, if you look at what the Dravidians look like, they look more like some of the Nilo-Saharan people and some of the Haritan people than they do, Austric people.
Asiatic.
You know what I mean? When I say Austric, I'm talking about like the Austric people might be older, a lot older than even some of the African. They might have broken off much earlier than, and like the Andaman Islanders. They're not the same thing as, for example, the types that were in Arabia. So that's my belief. Just from what I know about the archaeology and how they relate the dialect to that culture, which how it was associated with certain megaliths, that were connected to Kerma and Nubia, and the same thing with the Indus Valley culture in general. There's different black types that were there. Some were related to the more taller, probably, Maasai or Fulani, or those tall types that were in Arabia, tall, slender types, and then there was a gigantic Ubaid type of Eridu culture, in Mesopotamia, and that's the what I'm interested in is finding out where some of these larger bodied people came from that are still in Arabia. Some of us have to go over there. I'm not going over there being a woman because in Saudi Arabia, but in central Saudi Arabia, you still find these very large, gigantic bodied people that must have been similar to these Ubaid and even Natufian types that left Africa during the early Mesolithic or Paleolithic, whatever. But I do believe that we have to be very careful when it comes to genetics, though, because there's been a lot of intermixture of unless we're talking about autosomal DNA research. There's been so much intermixture of people from the Levant and from Persia and from Turks. I mean, I was just reading the other day about the tens of thousands of Persians that were brought in to work in the mines, of the Banu Sulaim, who are a black people in Arabia today. Another thing. A lot of these people we talk about, we don't know that they're still living, and they're still alive and well under their same names and ancient names. You said something about the Edomites. The Edomites, I had done my blog talks a lot about the Edomites and who they were as the Azd people. Now there's some evidence that these there were an African people, maybe Nilo-Saharan, that did also populate Arabia and may have, moved eastward into, the Indian Peninsula. But there's not been enough research on that. I mean, there's some certain linguists that believe that. I'm talking about Western, people that are reputable in the Western scholarly world that believe that there might have been some Nilo-Saharans there. And I believe, and also in an earlier encyclopedia, they used to say that the Manayan dialect seemed to have some Dravidic features. But I definitely believe that it's because, these Manayans, migrated eastward and not the other way around. And you look at today, the linguists too. There's some that are saying that it might have even split off of the ancient Afro-Asiatic people that settled in the Elam. But I don't really know much about linguistics, so I can't say either way. What's happening there, but I'm sure we'll find out. Everything's. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say another thing you shared was interesting about how, the Yoruba, they say that they come from the Palestinian or Canaan region. And what I learned about their geographical location, yams is not indigenous to Africa, nor is the chicken. The chicken origin is in India or Asia. I'm trying to figure out how I got there. Also, when you look at the haplogroup that most what they call Bantu speaking people have, which is E3A or E1B1A, it's still connected more to Asians through that YAP marker, the yes associate protein, Because when your Asian Adam left out of Africa around 60 or 70,000 years ago, possibly, all of his offspring, he gave rise to DE, and DE is mostly found in Asia with the Adam and Eve people that you were talking about in the Adam and Eve Islands, those super dark-skinned people. And then you find E3, haplogroup E developing around 50,000 years ago. Now, it's still an argument between, the Europeans like Michael Hammer and Spencer Wells over the origin of haplogroup E. Because some people are saying that the brothers who brought haplogroup E back into Africa did come from Asia, and when they went into the rainforests of Africa, they bred with pygmy women with mitochondrial DNA LO and L1. I know mitochondrial DNA M is an offshoot of mitochondrial DNA L3. That's the mother of that, and L3 develops in East Africa.
Yeah. The only thing is, like I said, we have to be careful about genetics because sometimes, populations move different places and certain.
Right.
For example, the Fulani, they're now in West Africa and across West Africa, but you find them, and this is another people that are, some people used to say, because I think they're ibexes or one of their, was it the ibexes?
Nomad, pastoralists.
One of their sheep or something is Indian, from East India.
Right.
So there's a possibility that one or more, of the people that were in maybe Mesolithic Africa had come back into, from Asia, not necessarily directly from India, but, they came, because I don't know why in the Sahara and North Africa there are, so many different types at an early period, and then during the Mesolithic, through the Neolithic, you find the very small Badarian type, and you find, the other aquatic, the people of the aquatic culture that were, larger, the type that the, Europeans used to call more negroid, and then you have your Fulani type, which is a tall, elongated man, so. But these people were all, in my view, occupying both, Asia and Africa from a very early period. It's just that we don't know which, who came from where and which person, which, people went. Yeah, but they were all, like, at least from what I suspect, Dravidians. If you look at them, the tribal Dravidians, they look, more like Africans than they do like modern day Indians, to me.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So when you say Dravidians, I like to be careful about that because people are jumping to conclusions thinking they're talking about some straight-haired type of man. They weren't necessarily that. You look at the Dravidian tribals, they're definitely not straight-haired. They're kinky-haired people, So just like the Elamites were not straight-haired people, and they're supposed to be, Elamites and they're supposed to be partly related to the Dravidians, but they definitely weren't straight-haired. So, and I had somebody, the reason I bring that up is because I had somebody recently, I think a Dravidian, coming on my blog and talking about how the Sumerians and Elamites were, straight-haired. Canaani, he was trying to say that Canaanites and Dravidians are the same people. But, in a sense, I can't argue that there was not a Canaanite influence in Dravidian people or an ancient Arabian influence in Dravidian people. So I didn't really argue with him. But as far as, this thing started by Renoco Rashidi or one of, I don't know who started in the Journal of African Civilizations that was discussing Asia and the Indians. Somebody, I think maybe Diop too, talking about straight-haired people that were Africans. You see, the problem is that, for example, if you look at Herodotus, what he said about the Ethiopians being straight-haired, he also said that their culture was identical to the Western Ethiopians. That means that they're not. One of those people, was mixed with something. You know what I'm saying? So the people that were.
Wait, let me just say real quick. This is a powerful show, powerful discussion. we have 7 minutes left for our live stream. I want to ask my guests. But first, I have to ask my guests. You know, they give you up to an hour after the show is over. So I want to ask you, did you want to stay on and continue answering some more questions? My call line is lit up.
Sure.
I think I told you in the email, you know, the show was 2 hours, but that time flies. And that 2 hours went by very fast. So, okay, I just wanted to, you know, okay, so I want to inform my callers in the chat, my listeners in the chat, and those listening from other devices, if you want to hear the rest of the live call, you have to call in, because after 6 minutes and 30 seconds, the live stream cuts off, and you won't be able to hear it. You'll only be able to hear the call if you call in. The phone number is 347-215-7987. Again, that's 347-215-7987. Please continue.
So I'm glad she brought up hair. From my studies is, you know, when you live in tropical climates, like North Africa is very arid. So when you know, the only reason why hair is coiled, because the original hair was coiled like that, is to keep the body heat down, the temperature down. But as you move north, it gets, you know, looser a little bit. But I'm also aware of when those Africans goes into Asia or Far East Asia, they develop a gene called enterlocus, which is ectodeplasmin A receptor, which affects certain, you know, protein enzymes in the body that deals with the dermis of hair growing out in a thin layer. So a lot of the original people I can hear you.
Oh, my bad. Go ahead, brother.
A lot of the people who developed the straight hair first, because Australoid only refers to a southeastern people, or Australoid Asiatic, a southeastern Asiatic that stayed within the south. Now we are aware of ultraviolet rays and how ultraviolet rays work. Based off certain zones that you live in, you can be dark complected, and that doesn't mean that you're sub-Saharan African. But technically, everybody's an African, because the species that we come from is a Homo sapiens sapiens comes out of Africa. Even the pale skin or the European, he's not a monster, he's a human being. We have the same amount of amino acids. We're the same biologically. But what I'm saying is that the people that develop straight hair were those people that migrated from the Australoid southeastern regions of Asia, who migrated north and went Far East Asia and developed the enterlocus gene, and they developed the bone-thick straight hair. So even them in itself, I think that some of them possibly did have straight hair, because when you migrate from the that thermal layer of equatorial Africa and go north, the hair gets loose as well. Hair change, not overnight, but through time.
Yeah, definitely, you know? Not overnight.
No, not overnight.
Tens of thousands of years, yeah. Of course, that's how we have Europeans.
Absolutely.
So,
I appreciate you, sister. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your help.
Honors more, and I definitely want you to come back on one of the Friday shows. You know, I had a couple of brothers that hit me up after the show. They was like, that brother was on fire. You know, it's good. You know, let me say it's good to have, you know, young Moors like yourself. And man, that sounds crazy with me saying that. Young Moors like yourself, you know, that can come on, you know, our Friday show and get into, you know, the esoteric knowledge and a lot of Gnostic information and break down the Bhagavad Gita, if I even said that right, and the Zen Buddhism, and then come on this show and you know, discuss haplogroups, A1, B1, E1, you know, you know, I'm just sitting here like, yo, that's amazing. So, you know, honest to you, brother, it shows that we have a chance as a people.
The sister's amazing. I appreciate that, but the sister came and dropped it, and it's nothing that nobody can dispute. I mean, this sister did work with Ivan Van Sertima. She dealt with, you know, when you showed me the page when she was breaking down the Tamahus in the Golden Age of the Moor, I had to come on and listen. So I give all honor to the sister, and that's amazing.
Well,
and I appreciate
we definitely need more geneticists, you know, to get into this, because that can be used against, you know, this kind of research as well, and it's already started. So. Oh
yeah, they trying.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you
for the comment.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Praise
Okay.
the Lord. Praise the
Take
Lord.
care.
Honors, more honors. Okay, I want to go to the next caller. Excuse me. Area code 504, ending in 2423. Islam, welcome to Moorish Science Radio. You're on the air.
Islam, brother Wade Ill. Hello, how you doing? Peace and love. Islam to you as well, Sister Dana Marniche. Praise
Thank
Allah.
you very much. Thanks for
Praise
coming
Allah.
on.
Indeed. And Rod giving praise to Allah and honor to his prophet, Noble Drew Ali, last prophet these days and times. And I just wanted to come in and thank you for all of the research that you have done in improving our origins. Because Moorish Americans, and me and Brother Wayel talk about this all the time, Moorish Americans, we get a lot of flack because of our Canaanite leanings as far as dealing with civilization. And you said something earlier in the show that rang interesting as far as, some sources even refer to Cush, if you will, and those other terms themselves as the sons of Canaan. Could you go into that just a tad bit? And as well, the second part of my question is, can you discuss Procopius in his actual statements about the actual crossing over from Canaan, if you will, or Asia into Africa? Because I don't have my sources with me, but I was telling Brother Wade Eel that a lot of abolitionists use those sources as well to justify the actual human experience of our people as opposed to an animalistic existence to prove their cases. So could you elaborate or touch on those two things, if you will, if it's not a problem? And thank you for everything you do. Peace and love.
Okay, stay on because I can't remember the first question. But the the second one is regarding Procopius, and I have one quote here from his History of the Wars, I think book 4. It says, I have heard this man say that beyond the country, this is Procopius just talking about what he found he was talking to somebody, I guess, in North Africa. It says, I have heard this man say that beyond the country which he ruled there is no habitation of men but desert land extending to a great distance, and that beyond that there are men not black-skinned like the Moors, but very white in body and fair-haired. He also says that he and other sources or other ancient writers spoke about columns that were found in ancient Mauritania pertaining to the Moors. I'm not sure if anyone out there has this source in front of them, but he talks about how the Moors were descendants of, or said that in these columns that they were descendants of the Girgashites, the Amorites and other Canaanites that fled before Joshua, the son of Nun.
Robert.
So, meaning Joshua was...
Right. No, I said the robber, son of Nun.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
But he's not the only one that said that. There were several early writers that said that.
Can I just interject real quick? There were people that challenged, Procopius's claim. And at first, they tried to make it seem like it was an inauthentic claim. But when I dug a little deeper, what I have found out was that they were saying that Procopius had, quote unquote, stole that from a man named Moses of Corinne, who actually was the one that charted or noted that information first, and Procopius tried to sign his name to it.
Right. So he was, from, I think, Armenia, Moses Corinne. Yeah, so that's what that's one of the sources. But then there's other, much later sources that say the same thing, that the Moors, I think also Diodorus Siculus had said that the Moors, were also thought to have come from India with Hercules, and that's because in ancient times, South Arabia and, in fact, Abyssinia were also called India.
Right.
And they, so there's different, let me see if I can find other things about the Canaanites, but almost the entire, almost any record you find about the origins of the Berbers, it says that, they claim descent from the Canaanites and the Phoenicians. All right, here's one. Well, this is a much later one. Oops. I can't find it now. Mauritania. You know what? My computer is so slow I can't even bring it up.
No problem.
But you know what? I suggest you go to my blog. I have a lot of that information about the Phoenicians and Canaanites. It's Afroasiatic blogspot.com, I think.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And my first question was, or rather kind of a statement is, I'm pretty sure with your conversations with Brother Wade Yield, a lot of the Moorish Americans, we take a lot of backlash from the Afrocentric community because of our Asiatic or Canaanite leanings, if you will. But, my first question that I asked you originally is, you made the statement earlier as far as some sources saying that Cush and all those other characters were actually descendants of Canaan. Could you touch on that a little bit?
I just went off that page. Let's see. Yeah, well, what I was saying is that Syrian and other sources. Let me just hold on 1 second. I just wanted to bring up this. Because I just had it in front of me. Oh, must have been another. Well, they say that the Syrians and other, sources say that the tradition is that Sudan was a son of Canaan, and Cush also was a son of Canaan. That's, I have this on so many different blogs. That's the thing, and I can't even find in my stuff I have up here now.
It's not a problem, sister, but the reason I asked is because a lot of that information itself, even about Canaan, because, the prophet, Noble Drew Ali, he always drive home this particular landmass of Canaan. He says Canaan, they came from Canaan. He even makes the statement that Cush and Ham also, came from Canaan. He didn't say that.
That was one of the things that got me interested in where he got his information, because I know that these same sources basically do not consider that Egypt was, the land of Ham so much as certain people from Misra and Arabia and Ham, which is the present-day Wadi Hamad region, having left there and, settled Egypt, and later on it became known as Misra. But the name Kemet is not related to this, to Ham, and that this Ham,
right.
The Ham of the
right.
Bible so much.
Right.
But here I just found it said from the Akbar al-Zaman of the 11th century. Here's one of them. It says, among the descendants of Sudan, son of Canaan, are many nations, among them the Ishban, the Zanj, and many people that multiplied in the Maghrib, about 70 of them.
Right.
So that's just one source, but there's several sources that talk about Sudan,
right.
and I think one of them was Al-Damashki.
Yeah, I think I have that source as well. I was trying to find it, but I just can't pull it up.
Right.
Let's see. Yeah, his was something called Nukbat al-Darfi al-Jaib al-Bar wal-Bar. It's good for, I hope you guys, you Moors, are learning Arabic, because that was, the language of knowledge in the black man's language. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff is in Arabic, but it's been translated, and that's the only way that I know about it. I wouldn't know about it I did take a year and a half of Arabic, but, I can't really read it that well. So this is, in this book by Al-Damashki, who was another Syrian in the 14th century, he says, the fifth section of in the fifth section of the 9th chapter says, concerning the sons of Ham, son of Noah, peace be upon him, namely the Copts, the Nabateans, the Berbers, and the Sudan, with their numerous divisions. Let's see. All right, here we go. It is said that Ham begat 3 sons, Kith, Canaan, and Cush. And Kith is the ancestor of the Copts, Cush of the Sudan, and Canaan of the Berbers. Oh, okay, that's not the one I wanted. Anyway, then it continues. He says, on the cause of the black complexion of the sons of Ham, who are the Copts, Canana, Berbers, and Sudan. That must have been another part of what he was saying. Oh, okay. You know what? I can find it and just maybe send it to Lord Abba for you, and he can post it somewhere. Right now, I can't find, because there's several places to talk about that. Yeah. Right.
No problem. But yeah, in all, a lot of that ties into what our prophet Noble Drew Ali was saying. I know I keep harping on it, but that would, I'm trying to figure out how to say this in a way, because they had some people who taught from certain sources before Noble Drew Ali. People like I can't remember the gentleman who founded the Hermetic League of the World. Noble Drew Ali's position would be almost superior to theirs, because they taught a traditional Hermetic view, whereas Noble Drew Ali actual rendition of the story fits in line with those Syrian historians, right, or Syrian sources, if you will.
Well, I'm working on a blog right now about that is going to touch a lot on that, on the fact that Ham is in this area, the Wadi Hamad, and where the Sulaim are, and a lot of the, extremely black people that are not known. See, the myth of Ham is related to the fact that a lot of these people work with the lamb. The word in Arabic for soil is related to the word Ham. So and that's where, in fact, the name hummus comes from there too. But that's why another person to read would be, I don't know with respect to Noble Drew Ali, but Tariq Berry. He goes into that on his blog about the origins of the word Ham and Adam, and the fact that Ham definitely meant the black, or the fermented dark mud. But and then that got turned into the allegory of Ham.
Mm-hmm. Let me just say, Ibn Khaldun wrote Ham. Excuse me. Ham, having become black of a curse pronounced against him by his father, fled to the Maghrib to hide in shame. Berber, son of Keslus, I'm not really sure how to pronounce this, but it's Kasluhim in the Bible, but he pronounces it Keslujin. One of his descendants left numerous posterity in the Maghreb. So I believe that because when you look at Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddimah, it was accepted into European academia at that time. And I and this is a guess on my part, don't quote me directly on this, but I believe that this is when the Europeans would start the curse of Ham myth, because prior to Ibn Khaldun's reference to a specific curse being on Ham, like, okay, in Islamic law, for instance, the way the Quran of
Lord Abba,
tells...
I'll stop you there, because I just want to let you know there's a book called The Curse of Ham, written by Dr. David Goldenberg, that talks a lot about how that started. It really started with the early Iranians that adopted the allegories of the Arabs well, actually, even before that, there was Indic Iranian texts, the Aryan texts that talk about Shamran and Hamran, and how Hamran was a slave. So they distorted the allegories relating to, Ham, Shem, and Japhet. In India, you have Hamran, Shamran, and Jalspita. But it has to do with the fact that the people that worked the land were often client tribes of the nomadic pastoral people. Okay, in Arabia and in Africa. That's why you have the Tuareg. They have castes of people among them that work with the land or with the earth, with metals, and they're the smiths. So it's a very complicated allegory related to the smithy and working the land, agriculture, and the development of that. And then they talk about in Genesis, for example, Jubal, who founded music, and all these other things. But Ham and Shem, even in Jewish tradition, Shem was black too.
That's right.
For a long time. So.
Right. So that brings me to my last question. With that, because it brings everything.
Let me just bring up Islam more. I just wanted to bring this into the equation, because this was something in doing my research, because Noble Drew Ali said the Egyptians who were of the Hamathites, right? So what I did was I looked into the area called Hamat, and it brought me to 1 Chronicles 4:40. And it says, and it's speaking about a tribe that took over the region. And it says, and they found fat pasture and good, and the land was wide and quiet and peaceable. For they, and they have they italicized, it says, for they of Ham dwelt there of old. This is 1 Chronicles 4:41. So I haven't looked too much deeper into it, but I just wanted to add that into the equation. Yeah, go ahead, brother. Ask your question, beloved.
Yes. My final question is regarding Genesis chapter 10 that they were referred to as the quote-unquote Table of Nations. Have you ever heard anything about that so-called Table of Nations, if you will, in Genesis chapter 10 being co-opted or adapted version of previous Babylonian records?
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sure it's well, we have to also remember that who the Babylonians were, though. I mean, the Babylonians were, they were ancient Afro-Asiatic people before, these people came down from the, mountains. There was other people involved in Babylonia, but there were Amorites, there were Semitic people, and then there was, Sumerians before them, and then there were other people coming from the Diyala provinces of the Zagros Mountains, who were basically white people, and they came down and adopted, a lot of that stuff. That's why you see their sculptures often, on these blogs, and people trying to show that they represent the ancient Babylonians, which they don't. But the Babylonians were basically the Semitic people, or Semitic people who were the same people as the Cushites or Hamitic people. So for example, they have Hadad or Adad, who was just the Arabian, deity Ad, or also called Hadad. And those names are turned often into, like I said, ancient ancestors. Hadad was an ancestor. Ad was an ancestor. Ancient Akkad was founded by the Amorites. So the Akkadians of Babylonia were originally, basically the same people who were in Arabia. Even as late as, early Islamic times, and maybe later, the Salim. Do you know who the Salim were?
I'm sorry.
The Salim Ibn Mansur. The people that were in the Hara, or the area of the volcanic region that were supposed to, he talks about them being black, and that all the tribes of the Hara were black, right? So the Salim actually lived in the Najd, but also were miners living across an area that extended to Iraq. So a lot of people don't understand, the connection, but a lot of these tribes that are in the Central Arabian area also, basically had settled in Babylonian times, and they named that area Babir. It was actually Babiru. It didn't mean gate, but Babir was actually a serpent. Baba is a serpent in Semitic, in the African. See, when I say Semitic, I'm talking about Ethiopic culture.
Right.
But
it's crazy. We have to clarify a lot of that stuff. I was saying it's so crazy that we have to clarify a lot of that stuff, because we know the original Semitic tongue was spoken by our race of people, if you want to use that term. Right. So
a lot of people, a lot of people don't know that. For example, in Ethiopia, today's Ethiopia, there's the majority of Semitic languages are in today's Ethiopia. Okay, and the so-called Cushitic is just like we were talking about before. It's no more different than Semitic than maybe Spanish is from French or Italian. So they're actually part of one group. Cush and Cushitic language, Semitic language. The Semitic, they don't even use those terms anymore because they found out they're too related. So they use the term Afro-Asiatic, or Christopher Arrett, an Africanist historian, had created the word Afro-San. So, but it was definitely, an African group, maybe an East African originally linguistic group, and they moved up. I think he calls it the Eritrean group, and they moved up into North Africa, and then to, through Southern Arabia into Syria. And then other people came down and adopted those languages, just like they probably adopted the Sumerian and Sumerian language groups. And I'm just making those statements based on the, physical anthropology of the area, because that's what really confirms a lot of this stuff. They found that the dolichocephalic type, what you were talking about, the long-headed type, was predominant and was closely related to the, East African or so-called Hamitic type for a long time, much longer than you would suspect from the all the monuments that are presented in books. And a man named Ephraim Spicer said that it's called the Sumerian problem because you see a lot of the monuments don't look like the skeletons found in the in the graves at this period. So they're thinking now. There's some Japanese scholars that say that these people did not come into the area until like a very late period, so they could not have been the people that are represented on the monuments. Maybe those are just people that came in later and then started representing themselves. Just like today we represent Jesus as white and Moses as white, could have been that kind of thing. So, Yeah, Babylonia was definitely part of the Semitic world, or the also Arabian world. So
Right.
that was collective, and also Egypt was connected. Now, there might have been also civilizations before that. For example, they found in Turkey or Anatolia, where you find a lot of African-looking people in the rock art there. You have even earlier cultures. So, I have that on my blog just so people don't get confused.
Right, that's right. Because that's funny that you mentioned Turkey, because our prophet also made a reference to Turkey. And, people who don't have an understanding, they'll say, oh, my God, it's a great conspiracy. He's saying we Turks, and we know the Turks are Caucasian or Europeans. But, all of that history that you gave, links the Prophet Noble Drew Ali history and relating us to Turks as well, it all fits in.
Well, the Turkish thing probably has to do with the fact that the original Turks were not the inhabitants of modern Turkey, but much further east in Mongolia. And that's where, the Turks come from Mongolia. That's where you have Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan and Central Asia. So those were, before they were Mongoloid-looking people, there were also black people there that may have very well had some connection to, Arabian peoples, because that's where the Khazars come from. And supposedly, there's a group of people in Arabia called the Khazars too. The Khazraj or Khazars, they call, it's pronounced different ways, Khazaras, but they were people of the Azd who lived in, Southwest Arabia originally, and they moved up into Medina and became the black giants of Arabia, who are mentioned in Syria as well, the black Saracen giants. So, a lot of this just has to do with the fact that now there's other people in those areas because, and that area of Central Asia I'm talking about was also called Kara Kitai, meaning the Black Cathay. Cathay.
Right.
That was, if you look up that word Cathay, there were also black Mongols there. And you see them on certain sites.
I have a source that says that Cathay is actually an ancient name for China, and that Cathay actually comes from the same root Chet, which produces the word Hittite. So I've only seen one source in that regard. I wasn't able to cross-reference it, but
well, that's interesting. But it's not just China. It's not just China. It's not just China, but it's way out further westward into Central Asia. Parts of it was called Cathay or Cathay, yeah. But see, the word China is also misleading because that, like I said, it involved the whole of East Asia, stretching from Siberia down to Java, Indonesia, and there's many different kinds of people in there. If you ever saw that film Conan the Barbarian, I always say that's more realistic than what a lot of the people are trying to put out there. A lot of these European nuts or Nazis are trying to put out there about, about history, because you had white red-haired Tocharians, whom I hate to say this, but the Chinese consider them macaques, or they call them monkeys. You had Mongol people that were black. You had Mongol people that were, later yellow. You had white Mongol people or whitish Mongol people. All in that area of China, and then further south, of course, you had so many black populations. Ink-colored according to their own texts. So, it's just really interesting. But people have to just keep in mind that populations move and populations change, and Native Americans didn't look like they do now. If you go out west, you'll see. I don't know if you guys saw the DNA Tribes site, the study that showed that the certain pharaohs were related to Africans.
Oh yeah, Ramses definitely said he had the same haplogroup as the quote unquote
this one was about. Yeah, this one was about the 17th and 18th dynasties, and they showed that they were related basically to Central and Southern and West Africans, perhaps even more than modern-day Ethiopians. In autosomal DNA studies, they showed that. But they also said that certain tribes in Native America, these black tribes out near Montana, I don't know if you've seen them, but, mainly the Sioux and the Oglala Sioux, they're very dark-skinned. And I'm thinking, they said there's some connection there between one of the pharaohs and those people. And I'm thinking, well, that might be because, some ancient Egyptians or Afro-Asiatic must have come over there, and that's why they're still so dark. I don't know if you've seen them.
Well, I was saying I'm going to definitely look that up.
Yeah, it's called DNA Tribes.
What was the name of those tribes again, sister?
Oh, the Sioux, the Oglala Sioux. That's one of the tribes of the Native Americans that are very dark. Especially in the 19th century, they're still very dark. Even though it looks like most of the original Native Americans were extremely dark. But did you have another question or?
Islam more?
Hello? Is he still there? Or?
You got any more questions, more?
Islam? No, not at this time.
Definitely. Your phone, or is that my phone?
Going off.
Oh, okay. I thought that was my phone.
Oh.
Islam?
Yeah, Islam.
Okay. Now.
Islam. No, I was just saying it's just so much information. It's so overwhelming to have this history, and it lines up, with the chapters in our Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple and a lot of things that, our prophet said. Brother man, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say peace. They not ready, more. Islam.
Peace and love, more.
Peace to you.
Okay.
Peace.
Thank you.
Hold on one second. I want to go to another caller. Because I got a lot of hands up. My brother Ngozi want to get back on.
Well, we need to get in some other callers.
Yeah, discuss the haplogroup, but I got too many hands up right now, so I want to go to area code 910 ending in 3935. Islam, welcome to Moorish Science Radio. You're on the air.
Islam, is it okay to identify myself?
Hello.
Sure.
You can ask a question.
My name is Rehum Madoda Mayube, and I heard you discussing. You said the word Ethiopian, and the prophet had that in his book. It's like we are not Ethiopians. Well,
Islam, brother.
Hold on, brother. Yes,
hold on, brother. My guest is not a member of the Moorish Science Temple of America.
No. While I was discussing and saying that what our prophet had literature that said we are not Ethiopians. What I was saying at that time was back in 1936, when Haile Selassie, the king, left Abyssinia, it wasn't called Ethiopia. In fact, the Mediterranean wasn't called the Mediterranean at that time. It was called the Ethiopian Sea. And so when he came back from England, he renamed the country Ethiopia.
Well,
see, the reason why I'm saying this, because I was in school, I'm an elder. They call me the grand elder. What happened is I looked at the nap on the front of the classroom. When she pulled it down, the teacher pulled it down, and it was a world nap. And I never seen Ethiopia there. It was Abyssinia. So that was back
in 1936. Abyssinia. That was definitely the land of Habesha,
Yeah, that was 1936. After 1936, when the Italians attacked the Abyssinia, the country was renamed Ethiopia. Now, then, cross-referencing in the Holy Quran of Muhammad, he fled. And when he fled from Mecca, Medina, and all that, he went into Abyssinia. He didn't go into Ethiopia. So the country wasn't named that. So it's just like when they name different things and they rename them.
Well, that's what happened.
Are you known about the crescent of Asia? Have you ever came up with? Ma'am? Yes, ma'am.
Hold on. Yeah, definitely. I just put the brother on mute so you can answer his questions.
Okay.
I just wanted to make
a statement that when I say Ethiopic, I mean, or people that the ancient Greeks called Ethiopic, meaning, when we talk about Ethiopia, that wasn't just modern Abyssinia or even modern Nubia. It referred to ancient Arabia, ancient black lands in general, extending across Africa. Just like the word Kush came to mean, Kushite came to mean people throughout Arabia, and then also in Nubia, and then you had the word Moor for Europeans came to mean the black man in general for a while. Okay, especially it's still in Northern Europe, like Germany and England and places like that. You'll find things like chocolates called Moro. You find in the Spanish countries, you find black beans and rice called moros y blancos, meaning black and white, moros and blancos. That's because these are names, that they came to define for themselves. Defining black-skinned people or people of very, very dark color. So, and I never meant to suggest that Ethiopia was an early name for Abyssinia. When I talk about Ethiopia, or when the Greeks talked about Ethiopia, they talked about a lot of times Arabia or, Africa in general. While the Bible actually uses the word Cush, which later became translated as Ethiopia, and that Cush referred to Arabia mostly, not Africa. So, just wanted to make that point.
That's right. Definitely, sister. Thank you. I hope the brother had his question answered. Time is, moving along. I got so many hands up. I know we're not going to get to everybody's question, but we're going to definitely try our best. Okay. Area code 831, ending in 0384. Islam, welcome to Morris Science Radio. You're on the air.
Hello?
Anybody here?
Are we still on the air?
Yes, we're on the air, sister.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought, okay.
We still on, but this person probably just didn't mean to put their hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just off the live stream right now.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to this next caller. I usually don't like to answer calls from blocked numbers. Matter of fact, I'm not going to go to that call right now. I'm going to go to area code 404, ending in 5578. Islam, welcome to Morris Science Radio. You're on the air.
Islam, Brother Wade Hill.
Islam.
Brother Tunica Hill, Atlanta, Georgia.
Islam, brother man.
Yes, sir. I want to definitely give all praise due to Allah, honors to His Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And I would definitely like to extend due honors to Sister Dana Marniche. I mean, the show has been absolutely fascinating, and it's sending the mind through a genetic walk through the path of your own self, so to speak. You know, so it's been very enjoyable show, and you know, it's serving multi-purposes. But I will say, with respect to Moorish American link to Moors on a continent, I will give an example because, of course, there's no God but Allah, so even research and documentation has its place. When I first heard the music Desert Blues of the group Kina Rewin, I know I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah.
You know, it reminded me of something by Lightning Hopkins. You know, it was the same feel, gave me that same feel. It was the same melody, and Lightning Hopkins is from Texas, and these brothers is from the deserts in Mali. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So
Mali music is where our music comes from.
Indeed.
Where our music comes from, Mali. A lot of it.
Okay. You mentioned earlier concerning, you said people in Ghana as well as the Yoruba have been talking about that in times past they had come from Canaan. Did the people themselves mention the reasons for the migration? Or I know you have sources by other scholars that mention Joshua running the Moabites and Canaanites and Hittites out of Canaan. You know, Rudolph Windsor was the first scholar that, you know, I heard in his book Babylon and Timbuktu that kind of supported some of the things Noble Drew Ali said in that regard. So I was asking to see if you come across any of those, the people themselves saying that they fled before Joshua. Excuse me.
Some of them talk about, you know, their ancient kings being actually expelled, and then a group of followers going with them. And some of them do, like the people that claim descent in Ghana, or I think both Ghana and Nigeria, from the Israelites as well. They, you know, they do, you know, have parallel traditions of, you know, having run into Canaanites and that kind of thing. And you know, for example, the Lemba though, who are the Bantu, who are of Bantu ethnicity, they claim to come from Senna, which is, you know, in my view, the same thing as Sana in Arabia, which is where the real Israelites, you know, came from. Sana is actually the area of Marib, and if you look at the Bible, there's a chapter called the Exodus, and it talks about a place called Mariba. Okay, so I talk about that in my blog, how, you know, some of the myth of the Lemba actually links up with, you know, with the biblical stuff. But actually, now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of the Yoruba and the Ghana traditions are linked to the fact that you know, they were part related to, like, the Hausa and the I don't know how to explain this, but they have traditions of coming from Canaan as well. The Hausa rulers, and they actually, there's a good book about all this. It's called, what's it called? I'm trying to turn my computer on to see, but it talks a lot about how the early kings fled from Philistines, or how Philistines fled from, you know, such, for example, Tuareg, they say, are also Philistines. I don't know if you know, but the Tuareg and the Wodabi Fulani are, like, extremely tall people.
Indeed.
Many of the Tuareg are over 7 feet tall.
Wow.
And that's just not something you see, in America every day. The whole group of people, that's all. And then the Tuareg, for example, wear purple, indigo, and what did the Phoenicians wear?
Yeah, they were known for the purple dye. Yes,
sure.
indeed.
Yeah, they were also known for their purple dress, attire.
Indeed.
And there's other people that don't know that the word for their dialect, they call their dialect Tifinag, which means belonging to the Phoenicians.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what that word means. Their language means the dialect of the Phoenicians. So basically, when you read about, all these places the Phoenicians founded in North Africa, they're basically talking about the Tuareg. The Phoenicians were known, also sometimes described as very tall people. And Zeno, I think it's Diop that brings up Zeno, who describes one of the Phoenicians as an Egyptian vine shoot because he was very tall and black. A Phoenician that settled in Cyprus. But I can't think of I'll write down, what you're asking, but I can't think of the name of the book. Again, I have a lot of this information on my blogs, though.
Okay, yeah, and I have begun to visit. Fascinating.
Especially if you go to the part about the Zagawa and the Jarawa, because a lot of the people are connected through those people, the Zagawa or Songhai, as they were called, and the Jukan and Fona of Ghana. Those people are all related. If you look at my writings there, you'll see that those people are all related, and they claim the same origin. They first came down from Wargla and other places in North Africa, in Algeria, and they were ruled. A lot of those people, like I said, were originally Jewish, where they became Muslim. That's why you have Queen Kahina, who was of the Jarawa or Garawa, and you have the man today. They're called Wangarawa. They were called Wangarawa because of that reason. So it's very complicated. You have to know this history. That's what I'm actually working on a book, and I'm trying to do it through this blog, that I'm working on to try to get it out, try to organize everything in my head, so people can see. As you see from listening, it's just so much information. Indeed.
And we wish you all the success, and we anticipate that eagerly, because this is definitely areas of research that has been neglected, as Brother Abdelman Serdeman mentioned earlier.
Right.
So we give thanks for that. One last question. The term Afro-Asia, you also mentioned that Asians came down into Africa. Africans came into Asia, and vice versa.
Well, when I said that, I was talking about...
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, in the way you phrased it, seemed like there wasn't a clear-cut view in your mind which came first, so to speak.
Right,
was it always revolving with respect to the migration from those lands?
That's because we're talking about something so far back. We're talking about, before even the Neolithic period, there must have been, because if you look at, black people were occupying, like I say, Anatolia, which is now Turkey, Mongolia, and other places for thousands of years before, the ancestors of modern Europeans were really that numerous. So there were people that were in Europe and Northern Asia that were, that had a similar culture, for example, and then those people migrated into, down back into Arabia, and the Ubaid culture came from the Tufians, and they immigrated into Southwest Arabia, and some of those people crossed over into, and from the rock art, some of those people crossed over back into Africa. So some of the people in Nubia, may be, or that are so-called, Negro, may may have been part of that wave of people. Because if you look at the people in Arabia today, like I said, in Central Africa, you're talking about, a gigantic version of who's that guy that played on Friday, Tebow or whatever. Friday.
Debo.
Movie of Friday. Debo. Yeah, these people are bigger than him that I'm talking about.
Wow.
They're in Arabia,
Wow.
And they've been portrayed in the art, European colonialist artists that went there to the Hejaz. I sometimes put it up of the Hawazin man. He looks just like Debo, or Mr. T. So,
wow.
But this one guy I saw in when I was living in New York, his bone structure was such that his hand, I'm almost 5'10" probably, and my hand probably could have fit like several times in his hand. No American man came close to what I'm talking about. These people are literally giants. Both in bone structure, and some of them are very tall too. Like even Osama bin Laden, he was like, what was he, 6'4" or something? But they have people down there and he's not black. I'm not talking, when I say black person, I'm talking about real black people. But in the Central Arabia, southern Central Arabia, which is Wadi Dawasir area, or Yamama, it's called Yamama, meaning that's where the biblical Jemima comes from. And you find these people who are the, representatives of the Az people, or Adites and Amalekites, and they're very, very tall as well. Some of them are, very tall people. And the Watusi, too, also claim to have come from Arabia and to have been Hebrews. So there's a very good possibility that all these people that you see, the very tall Tuareg and Watusi and Dawasir, all, originate in the same place. And that these people were the first people to be called Ethiopians by Herodotus, because they were supposed to be the tallest, blackest, most beautiful of men.
Right.
So,
right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So finally, in the classic use of the term as an adjective, black, would your average African American be classified as such if you found the general African American prototype?
As black?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm considering black people in America as black. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not considering.
I was just wondering what was the determining factor to be identified as such. I can understand in a literal sense that these people literally had black skin.
No. Well, most people. Did you know in Arabia? Africa is called the brown continent.
Okay.
So I'm not even using it in the way that they use it. But when I say
that's
black,
why I was trying to understand the methodology with respect to its use.
Well, I'm talking about the black people that are, the majority of black people, as well as the sub-Saharan African, mainly sub-Saharan or sub-North African coastline Africans, because everybody south of that coastline is still looking like African Americans, or like the Fulani, who are in some regions of Africa, the Fulani would be considered white.
Okay.
I walked into a party of people from the Ivory Coast, and they started whispering, what's that? I had braids in my head here too, and they said, "What's that white woman doing here?" And I'm not, I'm not leaving yellow. I'm regular. At least I think I'm a regular African American almost. I'm not really dark, but I'm not light either.
Yeah, I think that would hurt some of the light-skinned Afrocentric feelings to realize that possibly could happen to them.
I was offended.
I'll tell my brother Ngozi, who was on the line earlier, right? Light-skinned brother. You got Wesley Muhammad, he's a light-skinned brother. You got Natural Tahuti, who's a light-skinned brother. You got these, my brother Lasana Tunica L is a light-skinned brother. And if the Egyptians painted y'all, right, on the walls of Egypt, would they try to dismiss y'all as being, of Syrian descent? What is the determinative if we're looking at certain people that may be depicted on the wall? Like there's an image of Canaanite, well, I don't want to necessarily say they're all Canaanite. The ceramic glazed tiles from the 18th dynasty, I believe it is, of Ramses. And they like line them up, and at the very end, the one, he has dark, what I call Moorish features, deep Moorish features rather, but it doesn't seem like there's any paint there, or this could possibly be a light-skinned brother. I'm not sure. The paint could have faded. Who knows what happened in all of those thousands of years. So it's like, what, because when I look at my brothers that are light-skinned, I don't look at them no different than myself, but an Afrocentric.
Well, I just want to make clear, when I'm talking about black people, I'm not talking about light-skinned people. My family is mixed, okay? My mother is, sometimes people mistake her for Filipino, light-skinned Filipino. My son is, my ex-husband is a Kabyle from the mountains of northern Algeria, so he's very, very light-skinned. My son is light-skinned. My brother has blue eyes, green eyes. I'm not a racist, but I'm not interested in just, compromise on this kind of issue, because we're not talking about people that were of European descent, of Syrian descent, of, we're talking about people who have gotten actually lighter from, especially in Arabia and India, from mixing with other people and getting their hair, turning to something else, because the description of the early Arabs is not of, light-skinned black people. It's mainly of, like the As, for example, were, as Wesley says, Shadid al-Udma, which is extremely black, jet black. Okay, and the only reason you have people a lot of times with straight hair that are, dark skin is because they were so black in the beginning. You're talking about blue-black people. I mean, even in Somalia, you'll see people that are almost blue-black with curly hair. Because they were so black in the beginning that mixing with Yemenites and some of Somalia actually are Arabs themselves. They're not even they're the original Arabs. Indeed. They're the original people from Yemen, and some of them came from Mecca. So that's why they look like that. If you go to the area between Mecca and Jeddah, there's Hudhail and some of this Quraysh look like as black as a Somali. If you go to Israel, and this is what I didn't believe when I first heard of it, like 20 years ago, a girl said she saw people, that were Quraysh in Israel, and that she said they were, black, and they were complaining that they were so black, they need to stay out of the sun and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's weird. They must be, again, maybe they're slaves or something, or descendants of slaves. And here to come to find out that, they are the Kinana. Their Quraysh are from Kinana. That's what learning about the genealogy, you get to, understand what they're talking about when they say why the Syrians said the Canaanites are black. They have dozens of writers, the Syrian Arabs, the Arabized Syrians, saying the Canaanites are black. Now, Westerners are trying to tell you that the Canaanites are Syrians. But the early Syrians said that the Canaanites and the Arabs, were black.
Indeed.
They say Dahabi said if you go to Hijaz, you won't see a fair-skinned person. And that was back in the 14th century. That wasn't too long ago. And now, it's different now, of course.
Yeah.
But
Well, it has definitely been a pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time to come speak with the Moors, and we look forward to checking out your blog as well as any works that you will be having available in the near future.
Well,
thank you much.
Very
peace
much.
and love.
Thank you, and peace and love to you, too.
All right, we got
Everybody
3 minutes left, and the call is going to just flat out end.
Okay.
I want to thank my guests. I want to thank all of the listeners who have, called in and listened in tonight so that we can hear Master Teacher. This is my honor and my pleasure to definitely have the sister on. I would love to get my brother Wesley Muhammad on, one day as well. And
he'd be happy to come on. He'd be happy to come on. I can tell him for you.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
I don't know.
Did you have any? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if he believes in I'm sure he has a different view of Islam because of the Noble Drew Ali, but he definitely, is in league with a lot of what I'm saying in terms of
we have two different schools of thought on Islamic views. However, his works on Arabia and it's impeccable. It's impeccable.
Mm-hmm.
Those principal tribes, that type of that information that he has put out is just impeccable.
Right.
And did you have any last words that you want to say? This thing is going to cut us off in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, just to, if you want more information, go to the Afro-Asiatic Blogspot, and I can talk with you there. And if you're making sense, I can, you can contact me personally. So, AfroAsiaticBlogspot.com, I think it is. And maybe you can put it up for them in case, I have it wrong. Keep confusing
Definitely.
it with
I'll post it on my Facebook page. I have a lot